Oh, hello, and we're live. Welcome back to Reedsy Live, Reedsy's ongoing series of webinars where we bring on professionals from the world of publishing to teach you more about writing and publishing better books. This week we're having another one on craft with our returning guests Gina Sorrell and Caroline Leavitt. Both of them are editors here on Reedsy and both traditionally published authors. Gina, in particular, has a new book coming out on Tuesday that we'll no doubt mention during the webinar. I'm very glad to see you joining us today. While we're waiting for Gina and Caroline to join us, why don't you tell us where you're from in the chat box here on YouTube? I'll see if we can give someone a shout out. First people I see, Extreme Screenwriting from LA, C.S. Griffel from Central Texas, Angel from Everett, Wisconsin, Teresa from Middle Tennessee. Fantastic. Oh, Amy, another one from California. Fantastic. There's a healthy number of people joining us today. I really appreciate that. If you'd like to help us along, why not give this video a like? I know you haven't seen anything yet, but I assure you, you are going to like it by the end. Gina and Caroline are fantastic. We've had them on 2 or 3 times before. Caroline once on her own, and they've been nothing short of spectacular each time. As I mentioned, Gina, one of our guests today, has a book coming out on Tuesday called The Wise Women. As a very special feature for folks tuning in today, we are having a prize giveaway. She, or more likely her publishers, have been kind enough to furnish us with 2 free copies that we'll send to you, including postage and packaging. I've put a link in the chat here and also in the video description on YouTube. If you have time before this thing starts, just click on it, give us your email address and name. I'll delete them all afterwards, so you don't have to worry about me keeping that. At the end of the presentation, we'll do a little jamboree, what are they called? Tombola. We'll do a prize draw. And the 2 winners will have this new book sent to them, which will be fantastic. We have Phil from Chicago, Cindy from upstate New York, where she says it is cold. Deirdre, an hour or so to sunrise in Melbourne, Australia. Glad you could join us. Thank you. Stacy from Oregon. Margaret from Wilmington, North Carolina. Barb Taub, Isle of Arran, off the coast of Scotland. A lovely island. It's where you can get a little bit of everything in Scotland. Stayed in Lochranza for a week, I think, before. They've got a distillery there and some lovely walks. Eileen from Massachusetts, JC from New York, Ansky from New Jersey. Fantastic. Really glad to see you all joining us. If you didn't catch us at the beginning here, my name is Martin. I'm from the Reedsy team based here in London. Reedsy is a platform, a marketplace, a network where professional editors and designers and book marketers are available for you, authors and writers, to work with. Of course, we have a bunch of free educational resources that you can access for free. Just go to blog.reedsy.com and see the sort of stuff we do there. But today, we have a webinar on how to outline a book. And who better to learn from than 2 authors who have published now multiple books, who have their own unique way of writing a book and outlining it and working their way through. So no matter whether you're a plotter or a pantser, I'm sure everyone will find something interesting in this one. Hello, Selena from Berlin. Ash from Johannesburg, South Africa. Fantastic. Jere Ohere from Honolulu, Hawaii. Fantastic. Helene from south of Montreal. Waimanette from Bogota. Fantastic. Great to see so many people from so many continents. Have we got anyone from Asia here? We've got Cornelis from Christchurch, New Zealand. Hopefully we can tick off our continental bingo slip form and get someone from everywhere. But yes, I am now noticing that it is 8 p.m. here in London, which means it's 3 p.m. on the East Coast, noon on the West Coast, I think 4 in Hong Kong, maybe 7 or so in Sydney. Really appreciate you joining. I'm not going to take up any more of your time. So let's please welcome our guests for today, Gina Sorrell and Caroline Leavitt. Hello, ladies. How are you?
Hi. Hi. Thank you so much for having us.
Really pleased to have both of you on. Caroline, are you in New York at this moment?
Just outside New York, in Hoboken, New Jersey.
Oh, of course. We mentioned it before. Home of the Cake Boss and Sinatra.
Yes.
And Gina, last time I checked with you, were you in Toronto or?
Yes, yeah, I'm in Toronto, Canada. So I'm still having winter.
Sad. It's true. How do we know it's spring in Toronto? It snows. So yes, that's how it's happening. Here we are. Yay, happy spring. And it's heavy snow today, which is fantastic.
The little I know of Ontario, it seems like within a month it'll be too hot to live there.
Pretty much, yeah. It's if you're into fashion at all, you get that spring outfit and then you wear it every day for 1 week because then it's summer. It's just like that.
Oh, no.
No transitions.
Anyway, we're going to give people maybe a minute or two before they log in. You can see, do you want to know how many people are watching right now?
Sure.
We have 690 joining us at this moment, with more coming in. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in live.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Come over for cookies later.
Yeah.
If you're okay with it, Caroline, I'll drop your address in the comments there, and they can find
Okay,
yeah. Well, there's a lot to get on with. We're going to have a Q&A later where you can ask all your questions. If you ask questions during the presentation, just save them and repost them later, or I'll try to find them. For those of you joining just now, we're also having a book giveaway. Gina's new book, The Wise Women, is dropping on Tuesday. Have you got a copy there? We're giving away 2 copies to anyone who's watching this. There's a link in the description of this video as well as in the chat box. If you click it and fill it in, we're going to pick 2 winners at the end of this thing. So if you want an incentive to stick around, there you have it. Okay, well, let's get this thing started. I'll be sort of lurking in the background. If you need anything, just let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you at the Q&A.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone.
Well, hi, everybody. We're really best friends, so this makes this even more exciting. I'm Caroline Leavitt, and I am the New York Times bestselling author of 13 traditionally published novels, including Is This Tomorrow?, Pictures of You, Cruel, Beautiful World. My latest novel, With or Without You, is now in paperback from Algonquin Books, and I just sold an outline, which is why this is really great to talk about this today, and the first 70 pages of a novel that so far it's being called Days of Wonder, which follows the adult lives of a teenage couple who were both charged with attempted murder when they were 15. So, Gina.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. I've read it. It's so good. Thank you.
Yes, Gina has read it. This is my friend and colleague, Gina Sorrell. Okay, she is the author of this incredible novel. This one first, Mothers and Other Strangers, and this is the one that's coming out Tuesday, The Wise Women. Wait, I can't get it on the camera. Okay, The Wise Women. What's so incredible about this is that, first of all, it's already getting raves. Second of all, you have the chance after this webinar to sort of use her book as an instruction tool, because if you open up, you'll see right from the start that all the beats we talk about in an outline are there in this novel. You can see every point we make implementing what is sure to be a prize-winning book. And I'm not kidding. And it's out next Thursday. And it's also built on a genius idea. It's 2 adult daughters, a meddling advice columnist, and the novel starts, very important where the novel starts with Clementine, the working mom of a 6-year-old boy, discovering that she's renting the house she thought she owned because her husband has funneled all their money into a startup. It sets 2 extraordinary sisters, again, character is important, their arcs, we'll talk about it, and the controlling mother on a collision course when the bottom falls out for all of them, personally and professionally. It's about the price of real estate, the power of aging, class, parenting, finding your home and your place in the world, and realizing that the future can look very different from what you thought it might be. It's the most anticipated pick from Parade magazine and the Today Show, Read with Jenna, and it's going to be the perfect summer read. I can't wait for everybody to read it so you can obsess about it the way I am. Gina and I are going to be talking about outlining before or after, or whether outline is really right for you personally or not.
Oh, Caroline, you're making me blush. Thank you so much. I mean, I feel like I'm the lucky one here to be talking with Caroline, and hopefully she held up some of her books. I know she held up Without You. There's also this one as well, which I really loved, Cruel, Beautiful World. Caroline is my inspiration honestly, at all things writing, and also on the evolution of being a pantser to now being a little bit more of a plotter. So I know that a lot of people talk about whether they fall into like one camp or the other. But, for me, I really have grown on that journey of being somebody who completely wrote in the dark entirely, just had an inspiration that I went with and then followed it through and didn't actually map out until many drafts later. And today we're going to talk about, how different books require different things from you, and how, there's nothing wrong with people who write that way, and that's instinctual. And there's nothing wrong with writing both ways. And then also, to what it's like when you maybe have a deadline, or you have a year that you have to write a book, and you need to really make sure that every time you sit down at your desk, you've got something that you're focused on, how outlining and blocking out all the beats can really help you with that. Caroline.
Yeah. A lot of Gina's approach to plot is driven by the work she did to create characters as an actress, which many of you might find helpful, and she will talk about that. For me, as a novelist, I'm really in favor of structure, mostly because every once in a while I will get a lot of novels that have near miss rejections. I get a lot of novels from Reedsy, and the problem is always structure. Either the character arcs are not strong enough, or things aren't building as they should. Outlining can give you a map, an early map, before you start drowning. So I always begin with an outline, and I always begin with what's haunting me. I don't think about the market, and you shouldn't either, not yet. And I don't think about my readers, not yet, and you shouldn't either. Instead, I think about what is the thing that I want to know, that I care about. Because if I go deep there and figure it out, it's going to become, the deeply personal is going to become universal. The first thing you need is an idea that's going to grab you for the year or years it might take you to write this novel. And usually it's a question. For me, with or Without You, let me just show the pretty cover. The question was, what happens in a long-term relationship of a couple in their 40s when one of the partners falls in a coma, wakes, and is a stranger both to herself and to her partner? And she has a startling new talent that gives her the fame her partner's desperate for, and she's not so sure that she wants. But first, Gina, I want you to talk about your evolution from someone who never outlined with their first book to outlining partway through your second book. And now, and I know this because we're friends, that you're not only outlining your current book, but you did a synopsis as well. What was that like?
I know it's true. Well, with my first book, I was really, so a couple of things there I think that are important is that your first book, you have a lot of time. There's maybe you haven't sold it yet, you don't have an agent yet, you've been working on it for years, or at least that was my situation. I worked on it for a very long time. And so for me, I just had this idea. I had this first line of dialogue, and I really went with that first line of dialogue. And I wanted to know who this woman was and what this character was. And then I started putting the story together, like, who is this person saying this to? Oh, she's saying it to her mother. And then, what are those characters like? And I sort of built it out character-wise and circumstance, and exploring the themes and relationships. And it was wonderful. But, there was many, 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 many drafts to get to the end of that book. And so that was years long. And I remember having a conversation with you, Caroline, after that happened, about how I really didn't want to take that many years to write the next book. And so, we talked about outlining and the benefits of that. And it's honestly something that I've resisted, I'm not going to lie, for a very long time, because I kept thinking, I'm not going to have any fun with it. I'm not going to discover things. And what I'm learning is that that's not true. So for the next book, I started with those big questions that I want for myself. That, I always ask, like, what is this book about? What are the themes? Like, I come to theme pretty early on. What is why this book? Why now? Why these characters? Why are they here now? And I do a really very large exploration of all of those ideas to try to just sort of brainstorm, just see what I'm thinking about. And And then I still like to write a couple of pages that are just in that character's voice, or that are you're just sort of blind following one character. Because for me, character informs the plot. If I know the character, I can follow them. I know where they're going. I know what they're. I'm going to trust them. They're going to take me on their journey, and I'm going to be able to follow them. So I still do that, and then I look back and I see what I have. And now, earlier and earlier on in my process, I start to map out those arcs and look at those through lines and really get a sense of what the trajectory of these characters are, what their journeys are going to be, and then who the secondary characters are and how they inform that. And what I did, and maybe I'm jumping around a bit too much, Caroline, you let me know, but
No, that's all right. That's right.
okay. But what I did is I sort of did high level, and then I started to break it down a bit more. So it was this very general outline. And then I started to go into I wrote a synopsis for it, just sort of like a narrative synopsis for it, of where I think the story is going and what it's about and what the journey of the characters are, sort of really high level, looking at it. And then I started to break it down a little bit more into what I thought the first act would look like, what the second act would look like, what the third act would look like. And then for this final book, and we'll get to that, I've broken it down beat by beat. What about you?
Well, I started out, I won a young writers contest in my 20s, and I thought I was going to be a short story writer. And all of a sudden, all these editors wanted to buy it as a novel. I had no idea how to write a novel. I thought it was complete as a story. And I instantly got an agent, and the agent said, well, you have to outline it, and then we'll have a book sale. And I just want to interject that if you're being traditionally published, a lot of times they want to see a synopsis, which is a fancy word for an outline. So it's always good to be able to do this, whether you hate it or not. So I had to write a novel about this idea, and it was really, really hard, but the book sold and it did really, really well. So you might have thought that I'd continue with that, but I had this misconception where I thought that I was losing the muse, I was losing all the creativity. So I went back to free writing, and I ended up with these 800-page books that had no story. So I eventually discovered structure after about 7 novels I wrote like this. All of them 800 pages. And then I began to realize that you can outline, and there are surprises because everything changes. So, Gina, I wanted to ask that you were talking about detailing, or you've talked about it with me, detailing your characters' motivations and moral arcs, their trajectories, which is actually what I do when I outline, because I'm thinking of what's the character arc. They start out wanting this, and at the end, they should be sort of different, having really realized something. I actually call this the Rolling Stones method of plotting a book, because it's like you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, which in a novel is struggling really hard with high stakes, you can get what you need, which is different. So anyway, I wanted to know if you can talk about that, about character motivation and moral arcs. What is a moral arc?
So sometimes, well, I think you said it beautifully with the character, doesn't always get what they want, but they get what they need. That sometimes we see, for me, there's growth. The character is dealing with a conflict or is placed in a situation. There's a catalyst. There's something that has changed their world, and we have to watch them to grow and have that new information and that new world experience alter them, and see where they get to at the end. I think that you explain moral arcs better than I do, but for me, for me, it's about growth and evolution. It's about somebody starting at one place, an idea of who they are and how the world works, and then things don't work out necessarily for them, but they grow from the experience, and it enriches who they are, and then they often will, face the future quite differently and have their worldview altered by it. Hopefully they've grown as a person, they've evolved as a person.
It's really about how to live in the world, I think. But I'd like you to talk a little bit about your process of writing and outlining at the same time and what it looks like.
Okay, so as I was saying, like earlier, I do like to have this general idea of what the book is about. So for The Wise Woman, for example, I was thinking about one of the things that I was thinking about at the time. So I was thinking about this concept of betrayal. That a lot of us feel, think of betrayal, we think of it as infidelity, but what if you were betrayed in a different way? What if you were betrayed by somebody who had lied to you, or you were betrayed because the job that you had devoted so much time to didn't work out, or because you were aging and you got pushed out of your own industry because you were too old suddenly for your industry, or you were betrayed by your own ideals, they ended up working against you. So I wanted to really explore this different ways of betrayal. And so I had this character's voice in my head. I knew who she was. It was a mother. She had suffered a betrayal in her marriage. And so I started writing from her voice. And I just put her in a situation where I wanted her to discover that betrayal right at the beginning of the book. It's no spoilers. Don't worry. It happens right away. And so, and then to follow that through. And what I do is I go straight through for 50 pages, maybe 80 pages sometimes. It gets a bit less and less. I would say that I have like the first probably 50 pages of just where is she? What does it look like? What is the environment? And because I know the character so well, and I think that this is from my background as being an actor, where I spent so much time developing character and understanding what their backstory was and also what motivates them, that I feel really comfortable starting with the people and then filling out the world around them. So with Clementine, that's what I did. It became very clear to me who she was, what kind of mother she was, and then what her situation was, and then what her relationship with her husband was. And all these characters started coming in, and I start to discover the tone. I start to discover the voice. I realized that there was more humor in this book than other ones. It's all coming from that character for me at the beginning. They're really driving my story. And then I take a look at it and I'm like, that's all fun. That stuff feels really good, but at some point you got to have structure. So, I'm thinking, what am I looking at here? And I'm like, oh, I'm looking at a woman who is now facing a future that doesn't look anything like what she anticipated. So then, I start thinking, what was that future like?
Change.
What did she think it looked like? It's change. She has a huge change. And there is this catalyst that happens in the beginning. So then I start to be able to kind of map out, and really as I write, I'll then go back and I'll adjust my outline. And then at some point about midway through, I have the outline. I haven't written all the pages, but I have the outline. And so that's what it looks like for me when I'm going halfway. It's I'm sort of using the writing as the engine and the inspiration to figure things out. And then I'm able to logically go, oh yeah, this could happen next, and this could happen next, and this can happen next. And I allow myself to change it as I go, because that always happens. People forget that other characters take focus and discover,
Right.
like the wise woman started out with one woman, and then I was like, oh no, I want to give her mother and her sister equal time. So, then that's all these other threads start to happen. But I get to see where it's going because I've now gone ahead and mapped it out. And we'll talk more about that classic 3 arc structure as well.
Okay. So I wanted to talk about my wants and needs Bible, which I've actually talked before in Reedsy, which I give every single one of my clients in Reedsy. This was like right before my 9th novel. When I was writing it, a student of mine at UCLA said, oh, I want you to read this about structure. And I said, oh, no. I want the muse. I want to just free write and discover. And she said, okay, well, why don't you just read it? So I read this book by John Truby, Truby, The Anatomy of Story. And it just sort of blew my mind because he talks about moral choices, character arcs. And from that, I began to develop steps. So the first thing I do, once I sort of have the basic kernel of what the book is about, is I fill out the wants and needs. And I'm going to tell you what these are now. The first thing is, what is it the character wants desperately, or something terrible will happen? What's at stake? You can say, for example, a poor man needs to be rich in order to survive and win the person he loves. 2, what is the character's misconception that keeps him from getting what he needs? If we take that same first guy, if he grew up really poor and he visited a friend who was really wealthy, and his main feeling was, well, in order to be happy or loved, you have to be rich. 3, what is his plan and how does it fail? And usually the plan fails because of misconception. So our hero probably gets a scholarship, works real hard, gets a scholarship to Yale, goes into banking, something he doesn't really like, but that's part of his plan. He gets a job as the head of a bank, has a woman who marries him, sort of a trophy person, but he's not happy. 4 is the all is lost moment, which I've also heard people call the big doom. This comes about 3/4 of the way through your outline. This is when the hero comes home to find that his trophy wife has left him because he's working 1,000 hours a day and never home. He realizes that what he thought he wanted, money and lots of it, didn't make him feel happy, but it ruined everything in his life, every pleasure. And he has to figure out now, well, what does he need? So he has to take action. They're always about action. Because of that, what's he going to do next? Because of that, he quits his job that he hates and he starts doing something he loves, which is painting, something he used to like. And to his surprise, because he's doing it, he starts selling paintings. People like his work. And because of that, he starts to interact with all kinds of people, with all kinds of finances. He changes. Then we get to the end of the outline, the end of the book, which is you can call it the new equilibrium, you can call it the change. This shows how the character has changed and is living his life differently. Notice I say shows, not tells, shows. So there's our hero, and he's quit banking, he's painting, and now he takes a job teaching art to elementary school kids. He loves it. The pay might be crap, but he doesn't care because now he's realized money is not as important as happiness. Once I have this, I usually write a first chapter. And the reason I do that is because editors and agents always want to see that. They won't read past your first 3 pages if they're not great. So the first 3 pages are a microcosm. They have to show who's the main character, what do they want? What is the question the first chapter is asking? Because your last chapter is going to be answering it. It can be like, is money bringing happiness? The book we talked about above shows no, it does not. Does the world of your story change as character changes? Should. Is the ending satisfying? By that I mean you have not tied up every single loose end, but you give readers what I call a never-ending story, which means readers are left satisfied. So Gina, what do you start with when you're outlining?
Well, I always start, I love the wants and needs. I think that's so important. And thank you so much for
Me
talking
too.
about that. I always keep it with me. Like I always have it next to me and I take a look at it as a reference. And I think that's also something which I just want to mention before answering that question is, you start to develop what works for you, writing out wants and needs, having them nearby. For me, literally, I write a single line that says, what is this novel about? Like I actually write the words, what is this novel about? And then underneath, I say, this is a novel about facing a future that looks different than the one you expected. This is a novel, and then I have a whole bunch of point forms, and I just go with it. This is a novel about women rallying together to help each other. This is a novel about family. This is a novel about change. This is a novel about getting back to what matters to you. This is a novel about what's important. And it goes on and on and on. So that I start with that every time. What is this novel about? And then I start to see the themes that are exploring out of that, they start to become more evident and they emerge. And then I sort of write with those in mind. And then I ask myself, why this novel now? So that's a question for me personally. I want to know why this is important to me now, but I also want to be able to know, like for my characters, what's happening in their life right now. I'm not writing their whole backstory. I want to come at the moment where things are happening to them. That's my style. And I also think that's really interesting because I want to catch that character, I want to set them up and then I want to have that catalyst that happens. Then I need to know whose story is it about? Who's telling the story? And then I decide, how am I telling it? Is it first person? Is it third person? And then sometimes just for fun, and this is probably also because, I'm also a copywriter and I've worked in marketing and branding a lot, is I like to write the elevator pitch. Like if somebody said to me, hey, what's this book about? I like to write it as if it's already done, what the elevator pitch is, what it would say on the back of the book. Because I find that when I'm forced to get very succinct with what the book is about, it really helps me focus. And I realize really quickly where the holes are. If I'm like, well, it's also kind of, then I'm like, okay, it's not clear enough yet. And that's okay. Like it won't be for a while, but I like to keep trying that. And then, as I said, off to one side, I always have my wants and my needs checklist to mark it all out. I also write about each of the characters, so I know who they are, what are their wants, what are their needs, what is their moral arc, what are they facing, and I have all of that all of that with me as I go along.
Okay,
So
I want to say, I'm sorry,
yeah.
go ahead. So I wanted to say that, I want to stress that writing a synopsis, or you can call it an outline, it's really difficult. I mean, I know how to do it, and it still takes me 6 months. And along the way, you keep making discoveries. And sometimes, I mean, for With or Without You, I didn't realize that the novel had a strong theme about fame until my 10th draft. So Gina, we've covered writing blindly, writing and outlining from the get-go. But now you're working on a new book. What do you know now as opposed to what you might know after a few drafts and you're adding things to that?
Well, I think what I know now is that it's all fluid. Like I was really thinking that, that if I was going to outline, I was going to lose all the fun. It's not true. And, that I wasn't going to make any discoveries. Also not true. I realized that also I want to make the most of my time. Strangely, I'm not getting younger. I'm not aging in reverse. Rude. So, and I want to be able to write more books. So, I want to make the most of the time. I'm a working mom, and when I sit down, I want to make the most of that time. And I love that feeling of writing. I think we all do. I think that's sort of also why I've resisted the outlining, because that part felt like, oh, it's going to eat into my writing time and hamper me. But instead, I found it kind of freeing because I have something to work on that day. I can always take a section of the book. I can take a chapter. I can take a beat. I can take a scene, and I can work on it. So right now, I have a pretty tight timeline. And as I mentioned, actually, maybe I didn't mention this. I wrote a proposal for it. And I wrote a really high level summary of what the book was about, what I wanted to explore, what I wanted to illuminate. Then I wrote and I revised just 3 chapters, that I felt were like really tight, really good, just to see, was the style working? Was the voice working? The tone, that was all there. Then I did that big brainstorm document I mentioned, covering themes and secondary themes and main characters and conflicts and catalysts. And after all that, I had that broad outline. And then I broke down that first, second, third act. And I felt really good about it. I thought it was enough. And I showed it to my agent and I showed it to my editor, and they were like, that's great. You need to break it down more. And that was new for me. So then I had to break it out into beats. And I created a 22-page outline that has about 80 different beats. And some of those beats will be scenes. Some of those beats will become, many of them will get put together in scenes. Many beats will become chapters. But right now, it's almost like a point form of things I need to know happen. And now I'm working with the structure of what those chapters will look like. So I still have given myself that freedom. I'm going to show you.
Your wall?
You want to see it?
Show your wall. Yeah.
So now this is only the first and second act, Act 1 and Act 2A. Here we go.
Also, I want you to talk to us about the difference between the 3 acts, because I don't use acts. I just use reveals. Look at that.
Sorry about my ring light there. It's pretty dark here in Toronto today. So what I did was after I typed it all, I used to do cue cards, and I love cue cards. I have a ton of them. But my writing is terrible and I can never get enough detail. Like I go back and I want to add something else. Like, oh, this is where we meet this character. Oh, this is a conflict. Oh, another person enters, like as I'm discovering things. So this time I wrote copious notes and I typed it all up. And then I cut it all into strips. And so I have, at the Act 1, I have my setup. So that's the world that the character lived in before. It's their old world. It's their reality where we're meeting them in their current circumstances. It's also where the catalyst will happen, and the catalyst will change their world. And this is where my protagonist then makes that decision. Are they going to change? Are they going to go, oh, my husband stole my money, not a big deal, it's okay, we'll move on? Or is it going to be a catalyst that has them say, you know what, there's always been problems in this marriage, and I got to really face things that I'm not dealing with, and then move into the new world. And the new world, for example, in my book, the new world is I'm going it alone, so that is, so that's that first act for me. So I have Act 1 and I break it into A and B. So we have the setup. I'm also looking at another board where I have more notes. So, we have the opening, and then we have the setup. And then we get these complicating actions that take us into Act 2. And Act 2A is what I like to call the New World, or the New World rules. And this isn't me. This is like the hero's journey. This is Truby. This is Save the Cat. This is like almost like movie structure as well, that it is actually really helpful, I have found. So Act 2A, we have the New World rules, this new environment that the person is in. And then we have all these complicating actions, the things that go along with this new world that make it difficult to live in and to navigate because things are new. And that brings us up to the midpoint. And then the midpoint is, it can be a couple of things. It can be where the character's world is really changed and they're either really thriving in it or they're failing in it, but it's all these new realities. And then we have what happens after that, the second part of Act, let's call it 2B, after the midpoint, would be all of the complicated reactions, all of the developments that happen, and all of the, more storylines and B characters come into play. And, we start to see all these different crises and battles that happen within the character as they're adjusting to that new world and their new realities. And, this is also where, like, often in screenwriting, they say that there's that moment called the all is lost moment, or the dark night of the soul, or a big crisis that tests this character in this new world, right? And tests their growth. And Act 3 is we're going to see what are they going to do with all of that information? Are they actually going to have grown? Are they actually going to have changed? Is it actually going to set their world in a different course? Are they going to have that aha moment? Is there really going to be an evolution for them? So that's what we start to see in that Act 3. And then there is the resolution. And the resolution hopefully ties into the themes that, you've been establishing the whole way through. So if it was this character needs to grow and learn to be confident to go it alone, then hopefully we see that. Not that it's all perfect, but that hopefully we see that growth, that theme that was stated in the beginning, is there.
I want to talk about, there was a question that flashed up. What is a beat, from Jim? Okay, that's a really great way to outline too. My agent used to make me do something she called 8 beats. A beat is an action. It's not every action in your novel. You're going to have a million beats, but it tells the main story of the main character through actions. For example, say you were doing Jaws, or Little Red Riding Hood. The first beat is Red Riding Hood has to go visit her grandmother who's sick or dying, and she's afraid of the woods. Beat 2 is Red gets the basket all set up and enters the woods, terrified. Beat 3, Red sees the wolf, and something happens between them, and she realizes maybe he's not so scary. Beat 4 would be Red finally makes it to Grandma's house. The next beat would be Red comes in the house and something's wrong with Grandma. She doesn't look like Grandma, and she discovers it's the wolf. And the next beat would be Red realizes how brave she is, and she vanquishes the wolf, rescues Grandma. And the last beat is the self-realization, where Red realizes she is brave. All of these ways of outlining, you can experiment with different ways of doing things. It's you just really want to figure out what is going to make this book work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want to say that, looking in the comments, I know I'm a fast talker, and I don't want you to worry. There is going to be a transcript of this that will be available. So hopefully that helps. I get very excited talking about all of this. So I think it is important to play around with all of those different versions. Some people like to just do 8 beats. Some people like to break it down into 15. So different points in terms of the structure. Some expand it even more. I think that as you go along, you find out what level of specificity you need for yourself, and I think that that's really important. And to be open to trying different things. Right. I always think of a beat as an action moment as well. I think of it as something that, if I'm plotting something out, it's something that happens.
I also want to stress that I always hire a developmental editor to help me with my synopsis and with my outlines. It's incredibly helpful. I'm actually going to send Reedsy a copy of my outline for With or Without You, so that anybody who wants it can read it and see where all the beats and points are. But the reason why you often need somebody else to look at your outline is because you're too far in the forest. You don't even know if there are trees, let alone see them.
Yeah.
So do you have any last words, Gina, before we take questions?
Somebody wanted to know if what the green tape was. That just separates acts. It's painter's tape. So I think final words are, I would say that I don't think that anybody is just one thing or the other. I don't think that anybody is just a pantser or a plotter. I think that you will find that there are sections where things kind of can work really organically. For me, the opening of the book is often, it comes a lot more naturally than, let's say, the middle of the book, but all of these tools allow you to, when you get stuck, to have something to return to. And if you can let yourself know that you're not just going to a blank screen that day. You're not just going to, get stuck with writer's block and panic about that feeling. You have something that you could focus on that helps you map it out. I mean, that's really what outlining is. It's mapping. And I think we all have different kinds of maps that will work for us. And, so I know people who still don't do anything. I know people who just know, they just want to know what the beginning, the middle, and the end is. I think that the more that you work with it, the more that you'll discover what is the best strategy for you.
Okay, somebody was asking about where you find a developmental editor. Reedsy.com. They have millions of developmental editors who work on synopsis and outline. Pricing is all over the place. You just find one that meets your needs and your budget. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, sorry. My camera's failed, so I'm going back to my laptop one. Thank you very much, both of you. We're going to stick around for a bit of a Q&A where you can ask your questions. I'll take a while to sort of file through this, but as Caroline said, Reedsy is a marketplace where you can get in touch with, editors, ghostwriters, designers, any sort of professional you think you might need on your journey to publishing. We have folks here who have worked for independent publishers, some of the biggest publishers in the world. If you want someone who's worked with a household name, you'll find them here. If you have like a niche indie author you love, you'll probably find their editor here as well. But yeah, just head to reedsy.com, sign up for a free account, and you can just have a look at the folks we have here, including Gina and Caroline, who are two of our finalists. Before we get onto the Q&A, might as well use this opportunity for another quick plug for Gina's book. After all, some of you weren't so sure about the plugging, but this is a pretty vital part of the publishing game. You gotta sell your book because the publishers won't do it. Well, actually, you sent a thing earlier, which is a bit of a treat. It's a very quick trailer for Gina's book. Let's have a look at that.
Nothing says I do like real estate. Not diamonds, not a fancy white dress you'll wear only once, not a party that eats up all your savings in a single day. No, nothing says I want a future with you, like owning a place together and building your love 1 square foot at a time. Together, a house becomes a home, and with it, the security that comes with knowing that you've invested in one another. Just make sure you're there on the day the deal is done, or else you might be in for a nasty surprise. And whose fault would that be? Yours, dummy. That's who.
That's fun.
That's so great.
Thank you for showing that. That's so nice. Thank you.
Caroline sort of set it up at the beginning, but what would be your elevator pitch for this book?
Oh gosh. Okay, so The Wise Woman is the story of 2 adult daughters and their meddling advice columnist mother. It's about what happens when the bottom falls out and about facing a future that, while maybe uncertain, might be even better than the one that you hoped.
See all the conflict in there and all the drama, and that's what you want in an elevator pitch. You don't want to say, like Gina could have said, well, it's about these 3 women and they're all related and and then you look at that and say, yeah. You have to sort of like build on that.
You have to build on that, yeah, for sure.
Okay, I'm going to start rifling through some questions here.
Okay.
Let's see. Here's one from Frank's Fiction. How in depth do you go into your characters before you start outlining?
A lot. I
A
do.
lot.
Let me just show you my, see if I can move my computer to show you. I have a, whoops, I have a character wall where I have photographs of what I think the people look like. I write bios for them. I write letters from them. I know their wants and needs as intimately as I do my own. What about you, Gina?
I think I mean, I really know my characters well. I do a Pinterest board sometimes for them. Maybe not what they look like. I tend not to do that, but I tend to do things like where they live, what kind of job they have, what their neighborhood is like, maybe their favorite restaurant, uh, things that are touchstones for them. I also always make a soundtrack for the book that I'm working on that is really things that I think the characters would like, so that when I sit back to start writing, I kind of have something I can key into that gets me right back to where I need to be if I've had a gap for it. But yeah, character is something like, for me, it all starts with character. It all starts with people and relationships, and then I take it out from there.
Well, here's a sort of related question from Orange Chamomile. How do you make sure that your plot doesn't lead the character instead of the other way around?
Don't let them.
Plot comes out of character, not the other way around. You're thinking in terms of the characters doing the leading, like in a dance. You're thinking more in terms of the character. A story is not this happened, then this happened, then this happened. A story is because this character wanted this. This character had to do this next thing, and because the character did this next thing and it screwed her up, then she had to do this other thing. So plot comes out of character.
And I think, the only time I think the plot comes first is if you're doing something that's high concept. And then I tend to think of that more as, something that would be more applicable to like screenwriting. An asteroid is coming towards the Earth, the whatever.
Right, that's high concept.
Who's going to stop it? Then you go, who's going to stop the asteroid, right? It's going to be the bus driver and the lawyer. Is it going to be the retired astronaut? Is it going to be the kid working in the lab? Like, that's sort of when that happens, but I don't find that for myself in novel writing as much.
All right. Caroline, we've got one here for you. What if the protagonist changes for the worse and not the better?
Ooh.
Oh, that's fine. That is actually fine. I want to bring up, that can be the moral of the story. Maybe the character starts out thinking that, he's going to be, look at the Godfather, 1 or 2. It ends with Michael Corleone he changes for the worse, and we still want to follow him because we understand him. You can also do something like the book Leaving Las Vegas, where the main character, he starts out, he wants to kill himself by drinking himself to death, and so he hires a prostitute to help him. At the end of the novel, he hasn't changed at all. He's gotten worse. He just definitely wants to kill himself. And the person who changes is the prostitute, who falls in love with him and wants to stop him, and she can't. So sometimes that's a really interesting thing to do, Mike.
Okay, we've got one here from John Kaplan. Do you think outlining works and or is needed for short stories?
I don't write short stories, so I don't know. I don't know.
I guess.
Sorry.
It's been a while. Here's one from Jeffrey. Do you follow your outline in a linear fashion, or you jump around different beats as inspiration hits?
I jump. I might have what's called a writer's outline, which will be about 30 pages. And sometimes I want to write what I think is the end first. And then I circle it in red so I know, okay, that's done for now for first draft. Then I'll go to the middle and say, oh, I really want to write this scene where a giant mole rat invades the city. And so I write that and then I check it off. I do move around. Once I'm on my third draft, then I try to do it in a linear fashion. What about you, Gina?
No, I go straight through. And I think it's a problem, actually. I do. I go straight through. I tend to go really linear. And then if I get really stuck, or if I'm really not inspired some days, I might just for fun try to shake it up and write something else. Be like, well, I've really been wanting to get to that scene where they have the big fight. So I'm just going to write the scene where they have the big fight. And so I have to, but it takes me a lot for some reason to give myself permission to do that. I know it's okay. I know it makes sense. I know it has worked for me in the past. And yet I still find like that's why the outlining has helped, having the beats, because I like to kind of take them from one to the other and see how they're growing and changing based on the scenes and the events that have happened before the next beat.
All right, we've got a question here from Julia. Can the antagonist be the main driving force of a story?
Oh, I don't know. I think, well, I guess you could say Leaving Las Vegas, the antagonist was the driving person in the story. She was the one who was trying to stop the character from killing himself with drink. So in that sense, she changed the most and she was the main driving force. The thing to remember is there's really no rules. If it works, it works, which is both freeing and terrifying.
It is. No, it's completely terrifying. I think, I think also it's okay to know that there can be more focus. One character can start to, as you write, start to take center stage, become more developed, and it's okay to explore and to have different points of view, to write from different points of view as well.
We have one here, perhaps speaking broadly. They ask, how do you find out the tone of your novel? Is tone something that you are conscious of when you're writing, Gina?
Yeah, it is. I think that the tone of my first book was much more serious. It was darker. It was, there were complicated characters. It was heavier. It definitely felt more serious. Felt a little more sadder, and I liked it. I mean, it was what the character was going through. The character was depressed and estranged from her mother, who had just passed away, and she was trying to figure out who her mother really was, and didn't have the chance to ask her because she wasn't alive anymore. And so she had to uncover all of her secrets to see who this woman was and what she was hiding. I want to try something totally different this time. And so tone was a conscious thing. I kind of tend to start off in that same place every time because writing is hard and moody, and that's sort of where I go at the very beginning. And then I was like, well, what am I actually exploring here? And for me, it was really important that I wanted to tackle darker themes, or not darker themes. I wanted to tackle more complicated themes with a lighter touch, with humor. Like, I wanted us to be able to recognize ourselves in the pages and laugh at ourselves in a good way, laugh along with these characters in a good way. So that became something that was really important to me to make a decision on after those first few chapters, and then to go back and to make sure that was there from the very beginning.
For me, it's more about, again, it comes from characters. I have to figure out the character's voice, and they sort of dictate what the tone is going to be. And a lot of times I will do an exercise and just say to a character, what are you so upset about? And then I have them write to me, and then I hear their voice, and I start realizing, oh, this is what this book is about. I didn't realize it, and maybe it's going to be a little darker, or maybe not.
Right.
Okay, I've got one here from Valerie. She asks, how do you use outlining to write a story that is told in a non-chronological order?
Oh, I have to answer this because, Valerie, this was my nightmare that I complained to Gina about. That my novel Days of Wonder is dual timeline. Parts of it are set in Brooklyn in the 1980, and the rest of it is set in Santa Fe in present time before the pandemic. It's really hard. And I got this tip this is Matt Bell, How to Write and Rewrite a Novel in 3 Drafts. He doesn't really mean 3 drafts. That's a marketing decision. But anyway, what he told me to do was write out the past timeline, so you get all the beats, what the character wants, what happened. Write out the other one right beside it where, what happens, how it ends up. Then look for places where you can mesh. Usually what happens is the present triggers the past. For example, I could have my 15-year-old murderer is now 25, and she sees a teapot in a store and she freezes. Then you go to another chapter where here she is and she's 15 and she's about to do something nasty with that teapot. So you learn how you connect those different unchronological chapters with either a trigger from the present or a theme. You can vary that. Like, let's say the last chapter was in the present and my protagonist is laughing. I could start the next chapter back in the past where she's hysterical, she's crying, she's in a jail cell. Thematic, character, whatever else. It's freaking hard. It nearly made me crazy, but it can be done.
It is hard. It is hard. It's very hard.
I've got a question here from Jan, from herself and A.D. Perry. How do you handle a story that's writing itself and deviates from the comprehensively plotted outline that you've made?
Let it.
I love it.
Let it.
Follow it.
I
Follow
love
it.
it.
See
Follow
where,
it.
yes,
Let
where
it.
it takes you. And then you go
Yeah.
back and then you adjust your outline and you add these things to it. You know, that's, you just start incorporating it, which I think is important. And there's a question about that,
Right.
Martin, if I may, that was in here that was about what if there's more than one POV?
Mm.
How does your outline look differently? Sometimes it can be just different colored cue cards, you know,
Right.
or like different color Post-it notes, you know, so it's still outlined, but I can keep track of the characters this way, you know, and I know that this scene is it's Barb's scene, it's her POV, and these are the characters that are coming in. This is where she's at, you know, that can be in blue, and this can be in yellow over here, you know, for Wendy. Like, so I can also start to see in these different colors as I go through. Oh wow, we've had this one character like for 20 different scenes in a row. Might need to break it up a bit. So you know,
Right.
that can help. But if you're lucky enough to have the story kind of surprise you, you know, go see where it takes you. It's just words on the page. It's just words on the page. You can change them in a bazillion different ways, you know, and shape them like and rein them in. Like they're. You have to remember that that's you're in control of all of that. Like have some fun with it. It's supposed to be fun as well as being really hard.
Right.
Here's a bit of a procedural question. Do you use writing software beyond, I'm guessing, a word processor?
No, I don't. I use Scrivener, and it ate 2 of my scripts, and so I just use Word. What about you, Gina?
No, I don't. I'm just not savvy enough for it. I opened up Scrivener. It looked fantastic. I loved all the things that it offered. Or you can probably hear the rain. It just started to pour. And I just, it's, you know, it's all the things that I do with my hands. So, and I think there's something about me being able to either write on cue cards, like to do my yellow legal pad, you know, by hand, and then have the cue cards and then take all of that information, then type it all up in my outline and then cut the pieces up and put them on my wall. Something about doing that I find very helpful. Like I'm connecting with the material in a way that each time I do, it seems to, you know, clarify something for me more and more.
Like, yeah, I think there's a reason why a lot of these planning softwares use like cue cards and sheets as like, you know, a metaphor, because they're essentially just replacements for having cue cards and strings and things that you can arrange and put on a wall.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't like too much physical media lying around the house, they can be very useful. But yes, always back up. All right. I'm going to try find one or two more. But we have another one sort of on POV. Folks always like ask about POV, about the sort of decisions that go into sort of determining like first, second, you know, first or third or close third, and what sort of determines, you know, what sort of leads you to choose whether to tell a story from one perspective or have multiple POVs.
Well, it depends. I mean, my very first novel was first person, and it was like very intimate, and it worked for that. And then after that, I started working in third person and getting in the heads of at least 4 or 5 characters every book. And I like that much better because I'm a writing busybody, and I like to know what people are thinking and doing. It's hard to make a choice. Usually, again, it's like, does it read well on the page? I read my stuff out loud. Does this character seem alive? There's also the same issue with present tense or past tense for me. It's always, what do I use? And I don't know. It just depends on what it looks like and what it sounds like. Gina?
You know, I started out my first book as well was first person POV, and then I moved to third person. And I actually really like having multiple POVs. The book that I'm working on now also has multiple POVs. There's something about that. I think part of it is that I really love, again, I love character. I love people. I want to know what's going on inside their heads. And for me, it's a great way to explore it without falling to that trap of, you know, telling and not showing, you know, and I get to, otherwise I find it such a huge, and it's difficult. I find it really difficult when it's just a single person, because I find there's a huge responsibility on them to interpret and see and understand everything that these other characters are going through. Whereas this allows me the opportunity to get other people's points of view across. And I also find that the reader gets to know them better. And one of the things I'm always trying to do in my writing is, like, even if the characters are quote unquote unlikable, which I don't believe is a thing, so that's why I air quoted that it allows me to show why they think the way they think. It allows me to see their point of view. It opens up perspective in a way that I think is really helpful. And that's, I want people to, even if they don't agree with the character, to understand why they did the things that they did. And multiple points of view allows me to do that in a deeper way.
Right.
Great. The next question I had loaded up was about, likable characters, like whether you do have to, they have to be likable in order for you to, want to actually spend this amount of time to.
No, you don't. We just have to understand.
I agree.
There's something called, like, look at Tony Soprano. He murders people. He's ruthless. He's a gangster, but he really loves his family. He really loves his mom and his daughter. So we forgive him for that. No, if everybody is likable, then how are they going to grow and change if they're already perfect and likable? I say no.
I agree. And I also think that you don't have to like somebody to appreciate them.
Right.
You don't, or to learn from them, or to empathize with them, or to really just like learn from them, be part of their experience. I mean, I think there's such a responsibility, honestly, on the work to be something which someone says, well, I didn't agree with that character, or I wouldn't have done that. I don't see it that way. And I want to say, good. Isn't that nice? You got to spend time with people who did things differently than you and live differently than you.
Right.
That's a great thing. So no, if they're interesting, if they're well thought out, if they're well fleshed out, if I understand why they do the way they do, then yeah, of course there are people that I go, there's also just characters that I'll be like, I don't want to spend time with this person. But that could be because there's many other things that I don't like about it. Like, why is the story being told? And what is the point of this? I think, but I don't have to be best friends with somebody, with all the characters in the book, to enjoy the book.
Yeah, the thing to sort of bear in mind is that when people read your book, they're not going to immediately assume that the lead character is you. And so if your lead character does something reprehensible, they're going to like, how could you? How could you do this thing?
It's okay.
Okay, so we're reaching the end here, and it's competition time. As we mentioned at the beginning...
Sorry, can I answer one more thing?
Sure.
There was somebody who had a question about a timeline working with an outline, and yes, I have done that as well. I have used a timeline as an outline, and I find that really helpful. You can use it alongside or separate, like this is the month, this is what's happening, or this is what happens in the season, especially if the book operates within a certain time frame. So The Wise Woman operates over the course of a summer, so that became almost like an additional outline that needed to live next to it, because I couldn't have everything happening in the last week of the summer. I needed to spread it out. Okay. I thought that was a good question.
Fantastic. Well, I've got this number random generator here. I just need to do a quick thing and remove the duplicates of anyone who may have signed up twice, very sneakily. And I found 13 duplicates. Ooh, 13 sneaky people try to get themselves in twice, but don't worry. I've now got 545 people in here, so I'm going to 545, and we're going to randomly pick 2 winners. I've got your email addresses. I'll be in contact with you. Very first winner, number 96, which is, 96. That is Renee Austin. Congratulations, Renee. I'll be in touch with you tomorrow. And
hope you like the book.
Our second one, number 173, My Old Bus Home. And that's Walter Goralski. Walter, congrats. You are our second winner. I shall be in touch as well. With that, I think just a bit of housekeeping left. As we mentioned before, there's going to be a transcript of this on the Reedsy website. I'll have that up in the next week. If you signed up on Eventbrite, to you folks again. There's a bunch of previous webinars as well to check out. If you want to know more about the wants and needs, Caroline did a webinar for us a couple of years ago.
Right. It was a test.
Really fantastic one. Really fantastic one.
I'll link to it in the comments here, but also drop it to anyone who signed up, along with all the rest of the stuff that Gina and Caroline have done for us since. Good luck with the launch, and I hope to have you both on again soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Wise Women,
Appreciate it.
in stores near you. Support your local bookshops. Go in, see if they can
Yes.
order it in. And
Yes.
Carolyn's With or Without You. Both fantastic.
Yes, With or Without You. And keep an eye out for her new one, Days of Wonder. The title might change, and if it does, Martin will let you all know.
Oh, you'll know. Thank you, both of you. Thank you, everyone at home, for sticking around.
Thank you, Martin.
See you all again soon.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Happy